Welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 2019, brought to you in partnership with our Goals supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia. You can subscribe to Inclusive Design 24 on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 and hitting the subscribe button. You can also follow ID24Conf on Twitter, and if you have any questions for the presenters, tweet them using the ID24 hashtag, and we'll ask them at the end of this session. ID24 is a respectful community with a code of conduct that you can find on our website. We have people at the BBC in Salford and Glasgow who are watching right now. It's getting towards the end of their day. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far.
So next up, we have Seth M. Kane, and this is their presentation, To Boldly Go Where No SPA Has Gone Before. Over to you, Seth.
Great, thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly say thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to everybody at Inclusive Design 24. And as mentioned, my name is Seth Kane. I've been building websites since the late 90s, and also had an interest in inclusive design as a front-end engineer and subject matter expert since around 2007. So as said, to boldly go where no spot or single page has gone before. I just want to mention that throughout the presentation, there will be some background images with some links to those images if people are interested in seeing them in more detail. So before we venture into deep single page application, I just have some kind of like guidelines to follow, or at least get ahead of. And really that's knowing your web development best practices. Knowing, WCAG 2.1 and level AA is going to be critical. Having a deep understanding, or at least interest in the WAI authoring practice, is going to be really important as well. And then one thing that I have found to be extremely valuable is knowing at least one popular screen reader and how it's intimately used by someone with various disabilities, so you can actually use this throughout your journey. And then most importantly, and actually I think this is really the one big takeaway, is that while single page application is mostly a technical implementation, but you really can't do this alone. And I really encourage everybody to bring along the UX team and your designers and all that throughout the entire process. So what is a single page application? A single page application is a web application or website that interacts with the user by dynamically rewriting the current page rather than loading an entire new page from a server. You can find more information about this on Wikipedia, or just a general Google search as well. So typically speaking, there are two types of single page two types of applications. And one is a single load, which is more of a traditional sense. So that's multi page websites and so forth. And then with regards to a single page applications, there's really kind of two different methodologies. One is you load all of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript ahead of time. So it's basically a longer load time, but at the end of the day, once it's loaded, everything is loaded, except for some content or some other things. Or the newer kind of methodology is dynamically loading. So basically, based on user interactions or changes that a user may take, then new content or new data or new code actually is dynamically loaded. Examples of that can be found throughout, and I would say that most applications that are not meant for customer experience, or that are more business driven rather than consumer facing, might choose to go with a single load, and then customer facing or more consumer facing is definitely a dynamic approach, which I've found. So some examples that you've may seen here is, so I have a couple of screenshots of some popular single page applications. On the left, where the big one is Pinterest. So basically, after you've interacted with the feature, you may get some new content. And then going clockwise around, LinkedIn, I have a picture of my LinkedIn profile here, that basically every time I click on something or interact, new content will be loaded, and likely the route will change, but the document itself won't be re-rendered by the server. And then probably one of at least the most common ones that I use is Gmail. So here's my spam box, so don't be afraid to take a look at it. But ultimately, this is really an experience that has been driven from the inception of single page application. So why do companies or people or websites choose to go single page application? So some of the inherent values are speed. So once it's loaded, as mentioned before. Another big element is caching. So in the technical space, we want to improve performance and speed, and one way to do that is we have the ability to cache not only the HTML but CSS, and even so forth. You can start caching fragments of code or data bits and things like that that don't change very often. Resource management. So I know in some previous talks today, we've been hearing a lot about performance and also lower bandwidth type devices. So resource management is an important aspect of why people are choosing to use single page applications. So only load what is needed to be loaded, and then go from there. Responsive is a big one too. Most people associate responsive with the CSS side of things, but in most modern JavaScript libraries or frameworks, you can actually have responsive code. So you can actually change up the UI or the features and functionalities similar to a media query, but it's done at the JavaScript level. And then this is, I think, one of the things that has been driving, at least from the user experience point of view, is there's this seamless experience. If done right, a user doesn't perceive a traditional page load, get that white flicker between, going from one page to the next or one feature from the next. And that's one of those user experience enhancements that we're really kind of striving towards. There's some popular libraries and frameworks out there. I'm sure most these are the big ones, but there's probably plenty more. So just kind of going clockwise around, and Angular is a big one, Backbone, Ember, Knockout, React.js, Vue, and like I said, there's more. It really doesn't matter which framework or library you choose. And they all, kind of have the same issues and considerations to take into account. So the gravitational pull and why single page applications typically are not accessible is really important to know. The key points are bad HTML and no keyboard events. I've found this to be even true today, as old as single pages are. It's really important that we focus still on the best practices and the basics. With the introduction of ARIA, there is a constant misuse or no ARIA at all. So when we're using these dynamic changing features and functionalities without ARIA, we likely won't be able to communicate to screen readers and other assistive technologies. Lack of focus management, so making sure that after a user does something, we're actually guiding them through the journey of this website or application, and we're basically helping them understand what's next. In a traditional multi-page application, it happens automatically by when the page reloads and the document gets loaded. Lack of communication. So there are often times where maybe the page doesn't change, but something happens, and we're not necessarily communicating that visually, or with audio or through assistive technology to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And then this is the biggest one that I've seen overlooked a lot, is big changes to the document, and none of the above elements are actually happening. So like a particular case of this would be is like when you go from the home page to a search page, like the entire document is rewriting, but the page load isn't happening because it's all dynamic, and we're not handling that correctly. So I want to go through some of those examples here. So bad HTML, and hopefully no one gets too offended by the examples that I found here. But don't forget semantics. I mean, if you look at this image here, it's a picture of Angular or Angular's homepage, and there's a div on the right-hand side, and it's got a CSS class that's called hero headline, which is most commonly known as like a heading or a header, but they're using a div, and they're not actually reclassifying that in any way. So like, why aren't they just using like an H tag as a good example? So I know that a lot of people in the industry have used this phrase that if it looks like a button, acts like a button, why isn't it a button? So that's the same principle as like, we really can't, ignore the basics of HTML just because we're using a cool or extensive JavaScript library. So compliant HTML is absolutely critical, and it makes it challenging to validate it because most of it's dynamically loaded, but you still have to actually, do that, make sure that we're following the basics here. The other one is the misuse or no ARIA. So since most single page applications use custom components, and with custom interactions, the correct ARIA must be used to communicate, roles, states, and properties. So here's a classic example of, an href, which is a link, but then we're actually tacking on another ARIA element here called role link. So while this isn't, necessarily have a negative impact, but it's more code, which could impact, performance if this is at scale. So we want to make sure that when we're using, ARIA, we're using it, the right way, or frankly, try and figure out a way to not use it at all, which would be challenging, but it is possible. Lack of focus management. This is really more of a user experience kind of a thought process. So based on a user action or updates to the DOM, the document object model, you likely need to use focus management to guide the user to the areas that change. So like an example is in Gmail, I might be, adding a new email in or editing an email or removing an email. And after you change those behaviors of the content, a good example is like if you're removing it, what happens to it? So let's go through that as a quick little example here. So after deleting the message, where is the most likely place the user's eye and or mouse pointer will go? So like, there is probably proven research on usability studies on what happens here, but like just from my own point of view, like if I'm deleting my spam here and I check the box and I select this one particular email and then I hit the delete thing, I likely would go to the next thing in the order of the reading level. So like I would probably go to the next thing, right? So if we remove an element and we don't do focus management, what happens is the focus actually gets lost and goes directly to the body, which ultimately would prevent the user from moving forward through a linear or a guided way. So we really want to talk about focus management, and I believe that the best team to really articulate what the intention is, or at least what the best practices are, likely with the user experience teams that you'll likely work with. So in this particular case, I delete one and I go to the next. So lack of communication is one of those other things that's really important, because you might not actually notice something that's happening if you're required to use assistive technologies or other visual challenges. So more often than not, we use visual content and UI elements to communicate changes and updates. But if you can't see them, how are you knowing what's going on? So some classic examples of that is like when a screen is loading, a typical experience will be like we'll put a little spinner on the page. Or when you're typing in a new password, it's telling you that your password is starting to meet security requirements. But if you aren't visual or you aren't noticing that, we need a way to communicate the changes of that content in a live fashion. And one of the best ways that I've found to do that is using ARIA Live as one example. So countdown timers is a good example of where we see a lot of problems. Like if you're familiar with like some of the Ticketmasters or ticketing for sporting events, you'll have a certain amount of time that you need to like act on something. And if you're not knowing what's going on, that's going to be a big problem. And then probably where this really came into play is, with live updates or, chat mechanisms. So like fans of Twitter, if you're just sitting on the Twitter homepage, new tweets will come in. But if there's no way to communicate that to you, you likely won't actually know that it's happened. This is definitely one of the bigger ones that is a challenge to deal with. So big changes to the document. So that example that I gave is like going from the home page to like a search results page or something like that. So most spas Do not call a new document. We've already discussed that. So you need to really think about a few key areas. I know that there's been a lot of good talks in the past, and actually there might be some, coming up about route changes. So like going from, a .com/ to a .com/about or .com/search. So when the route of the URL is changing, we need to basically know how to handle that. So searching is a good example of, an issue that you might change the entire document. So you'll change with facets or filtering, and everything on the page will change, but how are you handling all that information, and how are you communicating both the user experience and actually making sure that someone knows that it's going on? And then sending and receiving new data is also a critical thing. So I want to walk through just some basic tips for when we're dealing with big changes. So the first thing is, change your title tag. So like when you go from home to about or home to search, make sure that you're updating the actual title. Consider focusing to the main or a big block of content rather than, to the beginning again. If someone's clicking from, the home page to the search page, they're likely most interested in the results. So why focus them back to the navigation to go through that experience all over again when you're just driving them to the content that they're hoping to expect? Use ARIA labeled by or other ARIA elements to reference what the content means. So in this particular case, if I'm focusing to the main tag, I don't want the entire main content area to be read out loud. So I'm just referencing that this is a description of that main area. So it could be something like search results or, about us page or whatever your H1 is on the page. Consider using an ARIA Live when the page is loading. So even though that the, page isn't loading and just new content is, and the example of using like a spinner or some sort of transition, make sure that you're communicating that something's happened so there's no void in what's going on. So what I want to do is I want to demo this, and in this demo and demos moving forward, it's video, audio, and some screen reader like overlays. So I will try and not speak over those, but basically I want to give you a little purview of what the demo is about. So 4 years ago, I built a single page application using Backbone.js. And at the time, unfortunately, not one consideration for accessibility was made. It was more of just like a proof of concept in this case. And the idea of this, application is similar to like a Dropbox. So the purpose is for a photographer to upload large images to be transferred to a server for later use. So it's a drag and drop, or it's like click and go, and ultimately it's a file transferring web application. So what I'll do throughout the rest of the presentation when going through these demos is I will articulate the behavior of what the videos will do, and then basically give an opportunity for everybody to just consume them directly. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is the mouse user experience. So we understand what the original intention of this application. So I'll drag and drop or choose a file. I'll review the upload details area of the page. I'll review the attached files to see which files were actually attached. I will demonstrate deleting a file that might not belong. I will review which files didn't get attached, maybe because they're the wrong file type. I will completely upload, and then I will try and view one of the images that I've actually uploaded. So let's go with the first demo here. So there is no audio on this, so I can talk a little bit over it. So I clicked, and I am transferring files to the browser through the standard browser object. I look at what details there are for the upload type. There are 10 files attached. One didn't attached. I'm looking and I notice that there's actually a file that I likely don't want. So I click to get rid of it, and it goes away. And then I finish my upload, and the files are getting transferred to the server. One thing to note is that this is a local experience, so transferring 50 megs goes pretty fast. And then I'm looking at a photo that I actually uploaded. So in this particular application, it goes super fast, but imagine trying to transfer all these files in real time, it would take a long time. So basically, the keyboard user experience, now let's go through that. So we just did the mouse, and now the keyboard is going to be similar. So I'm going to tab to choose, the files. So through the browser object, I'm going to hit enter to activate it. I'm going to use my operating system to select the images. I'm going to review the upload details. I'm going to view the attached files. I actually won't be able to delete a file that doesn't belong. So I'm striking that out, letting you know that it actually isn't possible because of the way that it was coded. I review the not attached files. I complete the upload, and then I view one image, or I actually can't do it. And that's another technical barrier that I'm going to face. So let's watch that example. So I'm selecting my files and I'm tabbing through the site, but you'll actually notice I can't tab to anything other than the choose files button, the cancel button, or the complete upload button. So I eventually get annoyed and I just complete my upload. Now I kind of want to show you that again. It just kind of goes through it, and I can only get to the new blue buttons. So here are the issues. So in my particular first pass at building this not accessible single page application, I did what typical libraries and frameworks allow you to do, is you can use any type of element and put any type of event on it. So I have this anchor, but I don't have the href, and it basically prevents me from actually accessing that button or putting events on it. So there's no way for me to get to the close buttons at all in the current state. So that's a big problem. And that was similar to like the Angular example that I showed at the beginning of this presentation. So now I want to go through the same setup, but with a screen reader. So I'm going to go through the tasks again. So ultimately the idea is to upload the files. I have broken this up into smaller chunks of videos so we could see each one in a little bit more detail. So to upload the file is the task. So I'm going to scan the page by the headers. I'm going to scan the page, for form controls. I'm going to activate the upload files. I'm going to select my files. I'm going to get confused and make some assumptions. I'm going to scan the page for new form controls because I'm confused and I need to figure something out. I'm going to jump to the upload details, and I'm going to get the upload details.
Sorry, not accessible. Form, no item. Headings menu. Heading level 1, not accessible single page up. Heading level 2, drag and drop files. Heading level 2, upload details. Heading level 2, attached files. Heading level 2, not attached files. Form controls menu. No files selected. File upload button. No files selected. File upload button. In dialog. 4. Window not accessible. Single page application. File transfer. Column view. Browser 0 items selected. 11 items selected. No files selected. File upload button.
So this is ultimately where I got confused because
Form controls menu. No files selected. File. Cancel button. Complete upload button. No items in. WebSparts.
I got
Headings
confused
menu.
because I didn't know what was
Heading
going
level
on. So
1,
I'm searching
not
again
accept.
here.
Heading level 2, drag and drop files. Heading level 2, upload details. Heading level 2, upload detail. List 3 items. Bullet combined file size, 704,933,868. 1 of 3. Bullet files attached, 10. 2 of 3. Bullet files not attached, 1. 3 of 3. End of list.
So I know something happened, but I was ultimately confused because after each user interaction, I was never told what was going on. So those are the 2 key areas that went wrong. Is A, after I uploaded the files, there was no focus management. And then even if I did focus manage my next activity, there was nothing that told me actually that things happened after I pushed the button. So communication was really a problem. So I want to go through the rest of the experience. And again, this is now, I'm going to try and delete a file. I'm going to get to the attached files area. I'm going to advance forward to delete this file.tiff because that's the one I ultimately want to remove. I'm going to try and find the remove button, and then I'm going to get confused again. And ultimately, I'll tell you what happens now so I don't have to talk over the video, is I'm hitting the enter key or the spacebar key on that delete button, but nothing's actually going to happen.
Heading level 2. Attached file. Delete this file TIFF. 72 megabytes. X. Clickable. DSC_X. Clickable. DSC_X. Clickable. DSC_0374 TIFF. 72 megabytes. X. Clickable.
So again, there are a couple issues with this particular one. One is the label actually on the button itself. Visually, X means something, but X to most people probably won't know what that actually means. So we need to make sure that we're actually articulating not only visually the concept of an activity, but through the appropriate labels. And then, as I mentioned, there were no keyboard events binded to that particular button because the href was moved or gone or whatever, and I just couldn't act on it. So let's go through the final part. And basically the screen reader experience again is I'm going to finalize my upload. So I'm going to jump to the not attached files, advance to the complete upload section, activate the complete upload. I'm going to be confused because I don't know what's happening. I'm going to be waiting and seeing if something happens or hearing something happens or experiencing that something's happening. And then because I get confused, I'm going to scan the page for new headers. I'm going to notice that there are new headers, and I'm going to advance to the complete.
Heading level 2. Heading level 2. Not bad file type doc. 72 megabytes. The file type is wrong. Cancel button. Complete upload button. Upload new. But heading level 2. Not attached files. Heading level 2. Upload completed. Heading level 2. List 3 items. Bullet files upload. 10. One of.
Great. So again, no communication and no focus management. So this is going to be a recurring event that basically, in the application that was built, there's no way for a user, especially one using assistive technology, to know what's happening after they actually act on elements. So now let's demo the better. And I have an asterisk here just because I did this kind of quickly just after the fact to help improve this. So by no means this application is now fully accessible. It's just giving you the concepts of what's about to happen or the best ways to approach them. So let's go through the keyboard experience again through the updated single page application. So I'm going to tab through the choose files. I'm going to hit enter to activate. I'm going to select my images. I'm going to review the upload details. I'm going to review the attached details. I'm going to delete a file that doesn't belong. I'm going to review the not attached files. I'm going to complete an upload, and then I'm going to ultimately view one image. So there's no sound in this video. So I'm tabbing to the choose file selection. I'm using my browser to pick the files that I want. I select choose. It focuses to the upload details area. I now focusing and tabbing through each of the buttons. I ultimately select one to delete. It disappears. And then I move through the other files to get to the complete upload button, and I activate it. It's uploading. And now I'm focused on the upload complete section, and you'll notice that now I have an image to actually look at. So ultimately, through some basic focus management and making sure that either keyboard events are there by native browser objects or by adding them manually, I was able to go through the experience as intended using a keyboard. So now let's do the same thing with a screen reader. And again, I've broken this up into chunks so it's easily digestible, but basically the first task is upload files. So scan the page by headers, scan the page by form controls, activate the upload files. I'm going to select my files. I'm not going to be confused or make assumptions anymore. I'm not going to need to scan the page for new form controls, and I'm not going to need to jump to the upload details, but I am going to get the upload details right away. So let's try that.
Headings menu. Heading level 1, updated single page application. Heading level 2, drag and drop files. Heading level 2, upload details. Heading level 2, attached files. Heading level 2, not attached files. Form controls menu. No files selected. File upload button. No files selected. File upload button. No files selected. File upload button. In dialog. 4. Window single page application. File transfer. Column view. Browser 0 items selected. 11 items selected. Upload details. Group. Heading level 2. Upload details. List 3 items. Bullet combined file size. 704,933,868. 1 of 3. Bullet files attached. 10. 2 of 3. Bullet files not attached. 1. 3 of 3. End of list. End.
So really what worked in that particular case was I started using focus management. So after I selected my files and I used the browser to get them ready, it immediately went to a new section of the page that told me that I had new details, and actually it read out loud or through navigating through those elements. So let's do the next activity, which is deleting a file. So I'm going to jump to the attached files. I'm going to advance to a particular file called deletethis_file.tiff. I'm going to find the remove button. I'm not going to be confused. I'm going to activate the delete button for delete this file tiff, and then I'm going to notice, or I'm going to hear or experience that the file is actually deleted. Now I will say before I do this that there is a problem, and if I were doing this in person I would ask what was the problem, but I'll tell you towards the end.
Attached files. Group. Heading level 2. Attached files. Delete this file tiff. 72 megabytes. Remove delete this file tiff button. Remove DSC_0374 tiff button. File delete this file tiff has been removed. Attached files. Group.
Okay, so the problem is, and I just kind of want to do it, is we all have issues sometimes with asynchronous, data and events happening. So in this particular case, what happened is through focus management, I went to the next elements and that was being read out loud. And then ultimately when the server or the application received that the button was deleted or the picture was deleted, then the notification or the communication came in. So it would be important, with the developer and user experience team to make sure that the chain of events is actually understandable as well. While this still is better than the previous version, there's still room for improvement even in this case. So managing focus and also using event communication is critical, especially if it's in the right order. So the last task is, or this might not be the last one, is basically finalizing the upload. So I'm going to jump to the not attached files just to check and see what files were attached. I'm going to advance to the complete upload, activate the complete upload. I'm not going to be confused because I'm probably going to have some sort of experience helping me. I'm not going to need to worry about if I'm waiting or not, and I'm not going to need to scan the page for new things because I don't know what's going on. And then I'm going to get the upload completed details, and I will ultimately confirm and view one image.
Not attached files. Group. Heading level 2. Not attached files. Bad file type doc. 72 megabytes. The file type is wrong. End of not attached files. Group. Cancel button. Complete upload button. Uploading files. Upload completed. Group. Upload completed. Heading level 2. Upload completed. List 3 items. Bullet files uploaded. 9. 1 of 3. Bullet errors. 0. 2 of 3. Bullet upload time. 3.898 seconds. 3 of 3. End of list. Upload new button. Upload with same data button. Form controls menu. No files selected. File upload button. Done/view DSC_0374 TIFF button. Done/view DSC_0375 TIFF button. Done/view DSC_0376 TIFF button. Done/view DSC_0376 TIFF button. Webcon 90% loaded. DSC_0376 TIFF image.
So basically, in that particular part of the application, again, after I acted on something, I was focused to a particular case. I had all of the keyboard events available to me on both the buttons, on the delete, and so forth. And then even what you would have noticed is after I activated the upload process, it was telling me that it was starting to upload. And then when it ultimately finished, it was communicating back to me when it was done. If this were a real application on a real server and I was uploading all of those files, it would have actually told me that each file was finished at a time, but because it happens instantly in a local environment. So you also have to think about latency and performance and how you're going to communicate the challenges around that. So just to kind of review all these key areas is really ensuring that you have best practice HTML is going to get you really far along the way. I just am amazed on how many of these frameworks and libraries allow you to just do whatever it is that you want. So it's really up to the developer and likely the QA team to make sure that best practice is being followed. Use native event-based objects when possible, and if you can't, then make sure that you're adding those keyboard events. Like, this is really important. So making sure that everything that is clickable is also focusable and also has the right keyboard events associated to it. Your ARIA needs to match the specs. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, one of the reasons why there is that initiative is to help both the browsers and the consumers of the content to be able to have some set of standards and design patterns to follow. So making sure that we're doing our best to use ARIA in the most appropriate way is really needed. Focus management, I know I've mentioned that a few times, so it's really critical, and that is to the best experience. Like, we want to make sure that we're helping the user down the journey, and really the only way to do that is through the appropriate focus management. And in some cases, there might be various paths to follow, but that's where user testing and UX really comes into play. I do recommend actually creating ARIA Live communication utilities, or frankly, any type of utility is good, rather than having a new element or component on the page for every time you want to do something. There's ways for you to actually reuse reusable components, and that's something that I've seen really help in the past. And then when making big changes to the document, consider all of the above as before mentioned, and really just kind of hone in on all of these points. So a developer of 20 years, I really believe that this is a team effort. There is not a developer on the planet that I know of that can do all of this by themselves and know all of the best practices, all of the know the best user experiences. So I believe that really to effectively provide a single page application, the entire team needs to be involved, and be involved from the beginning. Like, developers, user experience, usability, research, and testing is critical. Manual testing is so important. There's not an automated testing tool that I'm aware of that could tell you all of these things, because it's driven by experience rather than just by code. And then there's so much more to know that I probably can't even articulate in a presentation or a slide. So really go back and work with your team and get in front of as much of the accessibility and inclusive design practices as early and as often as possible throughout the life cycle. I don't know who said this, but I really truly believe this. There is a difference between a disability and the things we build being disabling. And single page applications right now in our web space are probably the biggest ones that are disabling. So we really want to make sure that, you know, we're following some of these methodologies and working with our team members to ensure that we're allowing as many people as possible to flourish on the internet and in digital applications and so forth. I have a couple of resources here. I'm not going to go through them, but basically they're in the slides. Really helpful areas to hone in on and go from there. And then I just wanted to say thank you again to the ID24 team and our sponsors and our supporters. And you can find me via email or on Twitter, LinkedIn. And I actually, because I probably went through the videos pretty quickly here, there's a link to all the slides and the videos so you can consume them at your own pace whenever you feel needed. So thank you very much.
Well, Seth, that was a great talk. Lots of great information, and I particularly loved the visible alt text you have with your slides on the images. That was really great. We don't have any questions on Twitter at the moment, but I've got a couple of questions ready for you. And the first one would be, if you have to pick between semantic HTML and ARIA well applied, what would your preference be and why?
I mean, I would go with semantic HTML and all you know, native browser objects over anything custom and ARIA driven as much as possible. And the reason really is that I think over the last, you know, 20 something years, the browsers have really done a good job of starting to get some consolidation in the way that they act and behave and create, you know, a standardization form of communication, whereas ARIA is still relatively new, and there still is some, you know, factors that aren't supported by all the browsers, and there are some elements that are also not supported by all the assistive technologies. So you're running the risk of kind of playing the IE6 game all over again when you use a lot of ARIA. Is you're going to have to make code for a specific browser or assistive technology rather than if you just use what is natively baked into the browsers and all of the standards. So I would definitely go with as much native and semantic as possible.
Yeah, great answer. Something that I often hear in the world of building, well, websites in general, but especially SPA is kind of, we'll add accessibility to the SPA later. What is your comments about the statement?
It's not possible. I mean, so I believe that just like a set of user acceptance criteria or documentation or requirements are thought of and developed and baked into, but well before an engineer or a web developer starts, the same needs to happen from an inclusive point of view, because there's so much behavior and experience that goes into a SPA or a single page application that if you're doing it all after the fact, you're likely probably doing a disservice in both time, money, and experience. So something that I make a practice of is when I work with our user experience teams and they're writing up the behaviors from a, you know, mouse point of view, I'm ensuring that they're thinking about and documenting as much of keyboard and, you know, assistive needs as possible. They're not going to have the in-depth knowledge, but that's where a subject matter expert or someone that's passionate about it can help. So I really believe that it has to be during the UX phase of the project and not afterwards.
Thanks for saying that. It's so important. It's really a point that that needs to get out there, that you can't patch these things later. They always end up as kind of second rate accessibility examples if you try that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Another question, live regions and focus management, they can also be overused. So what is your opinion about where these boundaries lie?
Yeah, you know, that's a really, really, really good point. And I think that's where user testing and kind of like, you know, usability studies can come in. Like, you don't need to tell a person everything, like that you're doing A, B, C, all the way to Z. The question is the user getting and consuming the proper information that allows them to go through the journey of what the goal is that you're trying to have them accomplish? So I think that's where, again, the user experience team comes into play. And most importantly, is content and content strategists. Like, I know from my point of view, like, you don't want me writing content and writing the communication that helps a user understand what's going on. You want to think about that and make sure that it's strategic, so it's implemented in a way. And then once it is implemented, having folks go through that experience and getting a good understanding with both, feedback and kind of tests to make sure that it's not overwhelming is really critical. Because the last thing that you want is someone to always hearing things and not having the right amount of time to consume or digest that information.
Yes, definitely. I've sometimes said it equal to ARIA, that focus management and ARIA are both things that if you apply them badly, they can actually lead to results that's worse than not doing it in the first place.
That's funny, because I actually had an experience with that yesterday with basically, think about focusing to a specific call to action. If you do that, then you're probably missing all of the content and the context of what that call to action is that's likely before it. So focusing and communicating is absolutely critical and should be used as sparingly and as strategic as possible.
Definitely. And there may be time for one more question. I saw on a couple of your slides, the visually hidden class appeared on a couple of the elements. Would you mind explaining to the people out there exactly what it does?
Yeah, let me find one really quick here. So here's an example. So visually hidden, is this what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, so ultimately what this does is this removes an element from the visual viewport of the browser or the application's experience, but it still has it in the DOM, and it still has it attainable to the assistive technology APIs. So an example of this particular one is when I'm using that communication utility is I'm injecting text into this that we don't necessarily need someone to visually see that, like loading is the example that I had in my presentation. So we use icons and other forms of visual cues to convey that user experience, but we don't necessarily need it to be visually in the viewport. So it moves it kind of off on the side, but it's still available to the API.
Oh, brilliant. That's about all the questions I've got for you at the moment. So over to Ian.
Great, thank you so much. I don't have a question, but I do have a tweet that I want to read out. It's from Jerissa Ramirez in Sydney, Australia. They say at 2:29 a.m., I guess that's 2:48 a.m. now, if you're still there, Sydney time, I am still tuned into ID24. I started watching from 10:45 a.m., been tuning on and off, listened to about 7 and 8 topics now. We'll catch the rest at the YouTube channel, Time to Recharge. That's absolutely right. All of these talks will be on our YouTube channel as soon as they are broadcast. So if you miss any, you can catch up the full 24 hours there. And I hope you've been enjoying everything so far, Jerissa. So for the rest of you, if you like this session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to youtube.com/inclusive design for future notifications. Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our gold supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia, our silver supporters, Adobe and SiteImprove, our bronze supporters, Samsung Internet DQ Systems and the Pastillo Group, and it is captioned by MyClearText. We will be back on the hour with Peter Shickley and the presentation, Jailhouse Rock.
Great, thanks
See
again.
you then. Thank you.